The story begins on a cold, overcast winter day in 1987, off the remote and windswept southern coast of Yonaguni Island, the westernmost point of Japan. This part of the ocean is not a place for amateur swimmers. It is a place where the East China Sea crashes violently into the Philippine Sea, creating treacherous currents that can drag a diver miles off course in a matter of minutes. The waters here are also famous for something else. They are one of the few places on Earth where large schools of hammerhead sharks gather. It was into these dangerous waters that a local dive tour operator named Kihachiro Aratake descended. Aratake was a man who knew the sea. He wasn't looking for ancient history. He wasn't looking for fame. He was simply scouting for a new, exciting location to bring tourists, a place where they could safely observe the majestic sharks. He steered his boat towards a location known locally as Iseki Point, dropped his anchor, checked his air tank, and rolled backward into the abyss. As he descended past the 20-meter mark, the sunlight from the surface began to fade into a deep, twilight blue. The only sound was the rhythmic hiss of his own breathing regulator and the distant, muffled roar of the currents. He scanned the seafloor, expecting to see the usual chaos of nature: jagged coral reefs, scattered boulders, and sandy valleys. But as the silhouette of the ocean floor came into focus roughly 80 feet down, Aratake froze. Looming out of the murky darkness was something that defied all logic. It wasn't a rock formation. It was a shadow that looked artificial. It was a massive, monolithic structure, dark and imposing, rising from the seabed like a submerged fortress. Aratake swam closer, fighting the urge to panic. The structure was colossal, measuring over 50 meters long, 20 meters wide, and rising nearly 30 meters from the seafloor. But it wasn't the size that made his heart pound against his wetsuit. It was the shape. Nature is a chaotic artist. It uses erosion, wind, and water to create curves, jagged edges, and random patterns. But the object in front of Aratake was defined by order. It featured sharp, precise 90-degree angles. It had massive, perfectly flat vertical walls that looked as if they had been sliced by a giant, prehistoric laser. There were smooth, paved terraces stacked on top of each other, resembling a grand ceremonial staircase leading up to a temple that no longer existed. Aratake hovered in the water, suspended in disbelief. He touched the cold, hard stone. It felt smooth. It felt engineered. He swam around a sharp corner, a perfect right angle that no current could have carved. In that moment, 60 feet underwater, surrounded by the silence of the ocean, Kihachiro Aratake realized he had stumbled upon a ghost. If this structure was natural, it was a geological miracle that had never been seen before on Earth. But if it was artificial, if it was built by human hands, then the implications were terrifying. Because geology and climate science tell us a very specific story. The last time this seabed was dry land, the last time a human being could have walked here without drowning, was at the end of the last ice age. That was over 10,000 years ago, long before the pyramids of Egypt were even a sketch, long before the first brick was laid in Sumer, long before history itself began. If Aratake was right, he wasn't just looking at a rock. He was looking at the ruins of a civilization that history had forgotten, or perhaps erased.
News of Aratake's discovery sent shockwaves through the diving community in Japan, and soon it attracted the attention of the academic world. Enter Professor Masaki Kimura, a marine geologist from the University of the Ryukyus. Unlike the skeptics who dismissed the find from their offices in Tokyo, Kimura put on a wetsuit. Over the next 15 years, he would dive the site more than 100 times, mapping every inch, every crack, and every angle of the monument. What he found transformed the Yonaguni Monument from a geological curiosity into an archaeological smoking gun. Kimura's map reveals a complex city plan, not a random collection of rocks. The structure appears to be divided into specific zones with distinct functions. The most prominent feature is what is now known as the Loop Road. This is a defined paved pathway varying from 20 to 30 feet wide that encircles the base of the main monument. It connects different sections of the site just as a modern street connects the buildings of a city block. Is it possible for nature to carve a perfect road around a building? Perhaps. But the coincidences were just beginning. Moving further along the structure, divers encounter one of the most baffling features, the twin pillars. These are two gigantic rectangular stone megaliths, standing perfectly vertical and parallel to each other. They rise up from the seabed like the entrance to a forbidden palace. In the chaotic, destructive environment of the ocean, where powerful currents smash debris against rocks for millennia, it is virtually impossible for nature to carve two identical, symmetrical pillars and leave them standing side by side, inches apart, without eroding them into unrecognizable shapes. Yet there they stand, silent sentinels guarding a lost secret. The deeper you explore, the stranger it gets. Near the summit of the monument lies the Triangle Pool. It is a depressed triangular formation with distinct carved edges. But the most shocking detail is not the pool itself, but what is inside it. Divers found a series of circular holes that appear to be drainage channels. These channels run deep into the rock, suggesting a sophisticated understanding of water management or ritualistic pouring. Why would nature carve a drainage system into a rock on the bottom of the ocean? Then there is the upper terrace, often referred to as the stadium. This is a vast, flat, open plaza surrounded by rock formations that look suspiciously like tiered seating. Standing on this underwater stage, looking up at the terraces, the layout resembles the ancient Roman theaters or the ceremonial plazas of the Inca High in the Andes. It is easy to imagine an ancient crowd gathering here 12,000 years ago to watch a ceremony, a speech, or a sacrifice. And finally, we must address the artistic aspects. While exploring the perimeter, divers identified a massive rock formation that bears an uncanny resemblance to a sea turtle. It has a defined shell, a head, and flippers positioned as if it is swimming alongside the monument. Another rock looks like a giant human face, with deep-set eyes and a mouth staring eternally into the abyss. Skeptics call this pareidolia, the psychological tendency to see faces in random patterns, like seeing a face in the clouds. But when you have a stadium, a road, pillars, a drainage system, and animal carvings all clustered in one single location, the random nature theory starts to require more faith in the idea of a lost civilization. The sheer density of these anomalies suggests that this was not a mistake of geology, but a masterpiece of engineering.
Despite the mounting visual evidence, the scientific community remains deeply divided. The primary skeptic is Dr. Robert Schoch, a geologist from Boston University, famous for his work on the space. Schoch visited Yonaguni and concluded that the monument is primarily natural. His argument is rooted in the specific geology of the island. The monument is made of sandstone and mudstone, which naturally contain bedding plains. These are parallel layers of rock that, when subjected to tectonic stress or earthquakes, can fracture in straight lines. Schoch argues that thousands of years of strong currents and typhoons could have sheared off the rock faces, creating the illusion of artificial terraces and walls. It is a safe, logical explanation that fits comfortably within the established timeline of human history. However, there is one massive, glaring hole in the natural theory. It is a piece of physical evidence that physics simply cannot explain away. It is called the debris problem. To understand this, we have to look at how erosion works in the real world. When a cliff face cracks and falls to create a vertical wall, the broken rock doesn't just vanish into thin air. It falls to the bottom. Gravity dictates that there should be a massive pile of rubble, jagged rocks, and debris accumulating at the base of the cliff. This is true for every natural cliff face on Earth. Yet, when we look at the base of the Yonaguni Monument, it is pristine. It is completely clean. The pathway surrounding the monument, the so-called Loop Road, is swept clear of any fallen rocks. Where did the thousands of tons of rock go? Nature does not clean up after itself. Nature creates piles of rubble. The absence of debris implies that the rock was not broken off by accident. It was quarried. It implies that intelligent beings cut the stone and intentionally hauled it away to be used elsewhere, or cleared the area to create a functional road. This absence of debris is the smoking gun, but it's not the only one. Detailed close-up analysis of the rock face has revealed another startling feature: wedge holes. These are small, equidistant holes driven into the rock at regular intervals along the fracture lines. This is a classic technique used by ancient stonemasons all over the world. They would drive wooden wedges into these holes and then soak them with water. As the wood expanded, it would split the rock cleanly along a desired line. We see this in ancient Egypt. We see this in the quarries of Rome. And we see it here, 60 feet underwater in Japan. Are we to believe that nature drilled equidistant holes, inserted wedges, and then cleared away the rubble? Or is it more likely that we are looking at a construction site? Professor Kimura believes that the site was originally a natural rock formation that was terraformed or modified by humans. They used the natural bedding plains as a starting point, but then carved, shaped, and engineered the rock into a massive temple or fortress. This modified natural theory bridges the gap, but it still leads to the same uncomfortable conclusion. Someone was here. Someone with tools, plans, and engineering skills was working on this site at a time when humans were supposedly primitive hunter-gatherers. And that fact alone is enough to rewrite history.
If we accept the possibility that Yonaguni is artificial, we are forced to confront a timeline that makes mainstream historians uncomfortable. The science of sea level rise is precise and unforgiving. We know that the last time the ocean levels were low enough for this structure to be standing on dry land was prior to the geological event known as Meltwater Pulse 1b. This rapid rise in sea levels occurred roughly 11,500 years ago, marking the violent end of the last ice age. This dates the construction of Yonaguni to the late Paleolithic era. According to our current history textbooks, humans at this time were nomadic hunter-gatherers. They lived in small bands, used simple flint tools, and followed the migration of animals. They supposedly lacked the social organization, the mathematics, and the technology to quarry thousands of tons of stone, let alone design a complex city plan. Building a monument of this scale requires a surplus of food, a division of labor, and a centralized leadership, things that civilization supposedly didn't invent until 5,000 years later in Sumer in Mesopotamia. But perhaps our textbooks are missing a chapter. Japan was home to the Jomon people, a fascinating culture known for creating some of the earliest and most complex pottery in the world. Could the ancestors of the Jomon have been far more advanced than we give them credit for? Or does Yonaguni point to something even older? Something global? Across the Pacific Ocean, there are ancient legends shared by indigenous cultures from the Andes to India. They speak of a lost motherland, a massive continent often called Mu or Lemuria, that was swallowed by the ocean in a great cataclysm of fire and water. For centuries, these stories were dismissed as myths, folklore, or fantasy. But here, sitting on the ocean floor, is a tangible physical structure that fits the description of a sunken citadel perfectly. And Yonaguni is not alone. In the Gulf of Kambat in India, sonar has revealed a massive city 9 kilometers long, submerged over 100 feet deep. In the Mediterranean, we find sunken ruins that defy explanation. Are we looking at the remnants of a global coastal civilization, a golden age of humanity that was wiped out by the rapid melting of the Ice Age glaciers? Did the survivors of this catastrophe flee to the highlands, carrying with them the seeds of knowledge that would eventually sprout as the civilizations of Egypt, Peru, and Mesopotamia? The Yonaguni Monument stands as a silent stone witness to a forgotten chapter of our past. It is a mirror reflecting our own ignorance. We like to believe that history is a straight line of progress from caveman to astronaut. But Yonaguni suggests that history might be a cycle, that civilizations can rise to great heights only to be swept away by the forces of nature, leaving behind only silent stones and scattered legends. The ocean is deep, and it protects its secrets well, but the stone remains. And as long as it stands against the currents, the question remains: who built this? Where did they go? And are we the first advanced civilization to walk this earth? Or are we simply the next ones to rise from the ashes? The truth is down there, waiting for us to be brave enough to rewrite the story of mankind.